This is the Sandman podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're discussing the finale of The Dead Boy Detectives, episode 8, The Case of the Hungry Snake.
We need your little Valentine, right? Because he knows real suffering from hell. That's real pain. And, darling, I can keep him screaming forever. Listen, Mommy's gonna run some errands. Okay. Gotcha, nosy. Fine. I'm gonna gas up the Miata, storm a bunch of shops, snatch a pair of ghosts. Is that okay with you? Kisses.
Welcome back, fellow dreamers, to the finale of the Dead Boy Detectives podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about The Case of the Hungry Snake, the end of, hopefully, season 1 of the Dead Boy Detectives. I am one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow dreamers. I'm your other host, John. Yes, welcome back to the podcast for our spoiler-filled discussion of the Hungry Snake. I keep thinking of the Hungry Caterpillar.
Yep, that's absolutely what was going through my mind as well. Very big caterpillar here, though.
Well, absolutely. Very big snake, I think you'll find.
Yes, it was.
But it did start off teeny weeny, as we saw in the little Disney-fied cartoon.
It is.
Of Esther's background, which was cool.
Yeah, but for hundreds of years, it's been expanding and growing bigger and bigger. On the children of the land.
Absolutely munching down on all the kids around Port Townsend.
Yes.
So, yes, if you're a child, escape Port Townsend for sure. But before we get into our final discussion of this first season of the Dead Boy Detectives, let's hope there is a season 2.
Yeah, no confirmation yet, but only 4 weeks since the show came out originally. So
yeah,
not
absolutely.
Too bad.
Let's hope we can continue playing in the sandbox that is the Sandman world created by Neil Gaiman, and of course being taken up by people like Steve Yockey as well to bring the Dead Boy Detectives. But a quick public service stream for you fellow dreamers to remember to head on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to any hellish or heavenly podcast catcher of your choice, especially if you're only just joining us, so you can catch all our Sandman and Neil Gaiman type content, from Good Omens to the Sandman, of course, to, of course, the other 7 episodes of the Dead Boy Detectives. You can, of course, send in your thoughts, theories, observations, comments, or feedback on any of the episodes of the Dead Boy Detectives or any of our shows as we cover them through our email at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where we put up spoiler posts of each and every episode that we cover on this podcast.
Absolutely, and every other show that we're covering as well. Lots and lots of stuff coming up for the rest of the year. We will, of course, be going back to our coverage of The Boys, which is the biggest show that TV Podcast Industries covers. We'll be covering that as it comes out in June as well. So that's the next show that we'll be covering after the Dead Boy Detectives.
Yes. We do also have Umbrella Academy popping its head up as well. The final season of that series.
Coming in August,
Yeah, coming in August. There has been talk of a witch in the world of our podcast as well, with Agatha.
Yep. Agatha all along had been confirmed as the name after lots of messing about from Disney. I think they were just having a bit of fun with us. The confirmed name, as everybody knew, is Agatha all along, and that's coming out in September. So lots and lots of stuff, but there is loads more.
It's a musical, isn't it?
It is. Well, there will be musical numbers in it, certainly.
Excellent.
And we know that one of the cast members from Heartstopper is going to be in the series as well. So that's going to be really exciting to see Joe Locke in there from Heartstopper over on the Marvel shows. So yeah.
So we'll be moving at some point this year from Esther to Agatha.
Exactly.
With our witches. So good luck to Esther, I guess, especially given what happened to her at the end of this episode. But let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion.
Absolutely.
Derek, who gave us what, where, when, how, why, and what for episode 8 of The Dead Boy Detectives, The Case of the Hungry Caterpillar? I mean Snake.
Hungry Snake. Well, for the final time, this show was based on characters created by Neil Gaiman and Matt Wagner, created for TV by Steve Yockey. He is also the co-showrunner alongside Beth Schwartz, and the executive producer on the show is Greg Berlanti. Episode 8 was written by Ross Maxwell. Previously, he wrote on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Riverdale, and got a start on Glee, doing the script writing, script supervisor and writer on about 65 episodes, so worked for a long time on that show.
Absolutely. That is the heavy yards.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah, that's how he
I
made
really
his big
enjoyed
break.
Glee as well when it came out.
It was fun. It was a huge show worldwide. Everybody watched
wasn't it?
You know, I think one of those shows that ran out of steam because it went on a bit too long.
Yeah.
Which is not what you could say about Dead Boy Detective so far. We've only had 8 episodes. We've got loads more story to tell with this crew, right?
Definitely.
And the episode was directed by Pete Chapman. This is his only episode, of course, of Dead Boy Detectives so far, but he has directed loads of TV, loads of TV, including comedies like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and the US version of Ghosts. And he's also done some Netflix dramas, including You.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Love Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Great show.
Great show. I think, only really got into it during lockdown, during the old COVID years there.
That's right.
Oh, show me age now.
Only a couple of years ago.
And
exactly. I think we watched 14 seasons during COVID. So the whole world was completely topsy-turvy.
And it was so good to have that, sort of comedic stimulation during COVID.
Absolutely.
It was really good.
Yeah, that and Superstore. Weren't they there? Those
Yeah,
are 2
absolutely.
COVID shows. Great stuff. John, do you want to give us the Netflix synopsis for this episode?
Sure. Crystal reckons with the past after memories come rushing back. With Esther's evil scheme underway, the group is forced to face their deadliest foe yet.
Excellent. So for the final time, let's get into our top moments from episode 8, which have been designated for this show by the titles that pop up on screen. So we'll start with the surname Von Hovercrafts in London. So this
Is that the Von Hovercraft?
No, it's the surname - Von Hovercrafts.
It's so funny, this. I mean, even just the fact that it's Crystal Palace, surname Von Hovercraft.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really,
Longest
really
name
good.
in the history of Netflix shows, I think.
Like, just such a silly surname.
Yeah.
As well as having surname in it. But
It's like placeholder. We'll fix that later.
But to be honest, the surname Von Hovercrafts, including Crystal Palace from the past, as her memories come flooding back, are all a bit of a nightmare,
They really are,
aren't
yeah.
they? They're kind of just awful, horrible people.
Yeah.
Dare I say it, the great phrase is that, Crystal Palace certainly didn't lick it off the pavement where she got her awfulness
Absolutely.
and horridness. I mean, we have getting people run over.
Well, absolutely. That's the big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she goes through the memories as she's eating these balls of memory that she got back from David the Demon. She did it right at the end of the last episode. And weirdly, when we were talking about the last podcast, we didn't mention that final moment of the episode as she pops that first bowl into her mouth. But here we see the experience that she's going through, all the memories that are coming back to her. Things like we have her shoplifting, and then when she gets caught, she gives the guy bad dreams for multiple weeks of terrifying experiences because he caught her. Then she's fighting with people in the street. She's stealing people's boyfriends. And then when someone ghosts her, as you say, it's heavily intimated that she made him walk underneath the car, walk out into traffic. So yeah, she's a bad person.
Absolutely. Like, she calls herself toxic, and
Yes.
she really was. And her parents are pretty grim as well. I mean, even just after the swallowing of one marble, I just like the fact that Crystal's like, people didn't like me.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Now I know
you
why.
can
Yeah.
really, really tell here.
Exactly.
Equally with her parents, who just didn't seem to have noticed that she'd been missing at all, even though she'd been gone for 2 weeks. And her father is simply just saying, okay, well, which credit card have you maxed out now? And it's been rejected.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yeah,
really.
so pretty
I-
grim, to be honest.
I kind of misspoke there when I said she was an awful person. She did awful things. It's an interesting kind of conversation they're having here about who is the real Crystal. Is it the person that we've known throughout the series here, the Dead Boy Detectives has gotten to like and has become friends with all of them, or is this person in the past who has done all of these awful, awful things? I think that's an interesting idea, and I guess that's what will be explored with her character in season 2. But that conversation where she calls up her parents after getting that memory back of the phone number to call them up, and they don't even realize that she's been gone because she clearly has so little contact with them, and she's clearly an awful person who keeps herself to herself and just uses the family credit card effectively.
Well, that's it. I actually really liked Edwin's response here, because in a sense she's wallowing in what has come flooding back and is grappling it with herself. But as Edwin said, well, did you find out anything useful from these memories? And she says the phone number.
Yeah.
It suddenly dawns on her that she's got a significant amount of memories to deal with and actually unpack for herself here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that her immediate thing is flight,
Absolutely. I like that you say that you had lots of memories to unpack, and then she starts packing to go back to London.
Exactly. Her immediate thought is, right, I've got to go, and sort of just takes her out of this new life that she has created when she didn't have the memories. And I like how that does come back in the conversations here, in particular with our favorite butcher of all time, Jenny. Like it's really useful. And I mean, you can see that the other members of the agency, not entirely sure how this is going, to be honest, and what it actually means. Because it seems, she does kind of say, well, look, my case is closed.
Yes.
This is what you were hired for. And I've gotten my memories back. The demon is dispossessed from me. My case is closed here, so I have to sort of do my thing now. Yeah,
exactly. There's nothing tying Edwin and Charles to Crystal anymore now. It was a convenience. It worked out really well. They became friends. She was using her power to help them out in cases, but strictly speaking, she's right here. The first episode was the case of Crystal Palace to find out what was wrong with her, and to get her memories back was the second part of that. Now that's all done, so she's going back to London. They do make the point now, they're able to go back to London, so why don't they travel back with her? And Crystal flat out refuses, says, absolutely not. Yeah. I'm going back to London. I need to deal with all this stuff, but we're not a detective agency anymore, basically. I'm going back. I have to sort this all out, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like how it's Jenny's point of view here, almost as that outsider point of view, Firstly, that she's woken up with a side braid, and is ultimately told all the insane truth that has happened within her apartment and under her nose. That she has ghosts in the apartment. She was possessed. There are sprites, and that Crystal is psychic and so on. Yeah. And she can see. After that possession, she can now see Charles and Edwin.
Exactly.
But after all that information has kind of bombarded her from Crystal and Nico, Crystal is kind of saying, well, look, I can actually wipe your memory if you allow me to. But I love here Jenny's sort of response back to her, which I guess chimes with Crystal in many ways, where she says, well, I'd rather know my own life, no matter how screwed up it is.
Exactly.
Even if I hate it, there's an honesty there in dealing with what you have and making the best of that and developing from that. And that's the disconnect because of how Crystal lost her memories. She's had this life, but she's seeing actually who she was beforehand, which in a sense, without the possession from David the Demon, without him holding back her memories, she may never have found Charles. So there's kind of this sort of fissure in her life.
Exactly.
This fracture that means she doesn't have that immediate thing of saying, well, let's park what these memories and deal with them whilst I also move on with my life that I know I've had now. I mean, ultimately, over the course of this episode, she does come to that realization that Jenny says. She says, I don't have to give up my new effed up life to understand my old effed up life. So
Exactly.
it comes through from Jenny
Exactly.
to Crystal eventually over the course of this, and because of fighting for her new friends in the way that she does. So
Exactly.
I really like this. I love the side braid gag as well. I mean, even just the sprites.
From the sprites.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they're saying, you look Mormon, you and your sister wives are going to find some brother husbands. And yeah, nice little bring back of them as well. You know, we don't get to see them very much in the episode, just that moment, and they've kind of been absent a little bit, but I love their little injection of dark humor that's in there in that quick moment. But this leads us on to the next major title, which is Goodbye. This is the moment when the decision is now made. Crystal's going back to London on her own to go and face up to her problems, face up to her new reality. There's an interesting piece again about this, you know, it kind of builds on that question that I was talking about a moment ago, where she has all of her memories back, but she's not the same person as she was when she did all of those things. So she's coming at it from a different angle. What made her do this, and can she maybe reconcile with the people that she treated the way she treated? You know, as you said, John, she's saying, I know in my mind that people didn't like me back in London. Now I know why, because I have the memories. So maybe I'll be able to fix something up there. Her parents just seem awful. So I don't know whether she's gone back to resolve things with her parents, but definitely she needs to resolve things with some of the other people she had seen in those memories. So she says goodbye, to everybody. We have that moment as she, walks out of the butcher shop saying goodbye to everybody, gets the handshake from Edwin and has a compliment as they finally become friends. You know, kind of like this new funnier version of you. You know, I thought that was quite cute.
Yeah.
Says goodbye to Nico, and Nico says, "I'm going to text you every day, and if you don't respond, I'm flying over to London."
Yeah, and there's the interesting one with Charles where he's like, you know, this feels like a goodbye.
Yes,
goodbye. That we're not it's not a goodbye, and we'll meet up when we're back in London.
Yeah.
It seems like, you know, there's a split happening here for Charles, and that's, you know, he's kissed her, he's got those feelings for her.
Exactly.
So, it feels a bit more intense here. I mean, even Nico earlier on was, you know, when she has her moment with Edwin, it's like, oh, you know, I'm sad that the people who I've gotten to know and love are leaving.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like there's a bit of a pulling apart here of the Dead Boy Detective Agency, with the four of them, and with Crystal heading off back to London.
Yeah, but Edwin does make a really good point to Nico at this moment when she's, you know, sad that he's leaving. He's like, I'm only a mirror away. So now that he has his powers back, and now that the Cat King's bracelet is gone that was tying him to Port Townsend, he is able to just walk through a mirror and be on the other side of the ocean. So while it is, at this point, it's just a pulling apart and saying goodbye of everybody, as Crystal leaves the butcher shop, they could still stay connected. So if there was a second season of the show, they could stay connected at this point.
Yeah.
And then the really shocking moment happens as Crystal's walking down the street, where we see the explosion in the butcher shop right behind her. Seconds after she's left.
Yeah, Esther collecting her ghosts in a jar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really very soon after she's left, so she's able to rush back in, to help Jenny get Nico from under the rubble.
Yeah.
This galvanizes Crystal to then want to rescue her new friends.
Exactly.
And she's almost saying to Nico as well, you stay here. Nico's like, no, they're my friends as well. Exactly. I'm coming with you if I can help.
Absolutely. I love where she goes, it's not a place for humans to go. And Jenny's kind of going, but are you human? You are human. After hearing all this other stuff, and then she goes, look, I don't care anymore. I've got to sort out my butcher shop.
It's also, I just love her phrase here where Jenny says, no, I've got the wreckage of my family business to deal with.
Exactly.
You know, ladies just don't die on me, you know?
Yeah. As she gives the two of them cleavers to walk out of the store. I will say I was convinced at this point that Nico's body was dead on the floor.
I do know what you mean.
And she was a ghost, because everybody in that room can now see ghosts. And I thought that's the way they were going to go for the rest of the episode, that Nico would actually be a ghost beside Crystal, the only human left, effectively. They didn't go that way. That was definitely Nico that came back at that point. But I was full certain that's the way they were going to go with the character of Nico,
Yeah.
that they'd kill her off here, but she's a ghost, so she could still hang around with the Dead Boy Detectives.
But Crystal and Nico, clever here as well. They don't just go marching towards Esther. They do ultimately prepare for battle, which I think takes us on to our next moment.
It is.
Preparing for battle
Yeah.
as they head off over to the Cat King. Luckily, they didn't have to get sort through 146 of the cats to find
Nope.
him, but I did like the gag of trying to see if one of them was the Cat King. No, it was just a regular cat.
Absolutely. And I think Nico is really, really hopeful that she's going to be able to speak to cats. Now that she knows that some cats can speak, I think Nico wants to be able to communicate with
definitely.
cats. So, are you the Cat King? But they're treated to the tale of Esther from the Cat King. So, really like that moment where he's just like, sit down and I will tell you the story. I'll try and keep it as short as possible, but you need to sit. There's a lot of details to go through.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit reticent at first because he's just been killed by her.
Exactly.
He's kind of like, hang on a sec, do you know what it feels like to try and re-emerge from your own corpse? But I do like how they sort of turn around and says, well, look, it's a win-win for you if you don't have to get involved, and if you tell us and we win, it's sweet revenge on your behalf, as she killed you. So,
Yes.
We've gotten revenge for you. But I like the vibe of his tale.
Yes.
In the cartoony Disney type. It felt very Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that kind of Cinderella type vibe to it, and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a really good style to tell this story that gets quite dark as it goes on, we hear that Esther's been there for all time, since before the start of Port Townsend. She was one of the pioneers that founded the town, and was known to be very beautiful, but her husband cheating on her with somebody else that was also considered beautiful, so she learnt the ways of magic from the books her mother left her.
It's the blasphemous dark books. I like that.
Yes, and then killed her husband and his lover. But as the Cat King says, once you had a taste of that power, you want more of it. So the story of Esther, where she's gone from the scorned woman, effectively, the scorned wife, who's been cheated on, to a woman that wants to be as powerful as possible, getting first eternal life, then finding out a way to keep her youth, because she got eternal life tinged with the fact that she would continue to age but would never die.
Well, that's it. I love the fact that, whilst she was granted immortality when she called on Lilith, that grant did not include eternal youth.
Yes.
So she would effectively almost be a walking bag of skin at some point. She would just age and age and age.
Exactly.
So this workaround of feeding children to her pet snake in order to revamp her collagen and get rid of those wrinkles.
It's all about the small print, yeah.
I really enjoyed that. It was good to get the Lilith part of this, as well. Just she is the first woman. The blood magic sort of helps women who have been beaten, abused, downtrodden, and so on. So she is the woman that wanted more from the Garden of Eden. So I really like this tie-in, back to Leapers from the Lighthouse with the pictures.
Yes, and the fact that any woman that needs her help can speak to Lilith and can find a way to Lilith. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting little touch, but I'm going to come back to that later on, because there's something in that I feel is evident in the way this episode was written. But I'll come back to that later on. One of the things I really liked in the Cat King's story, though, are the touches of cat that come out in how he speaks. Cats don't talk. I promise you, our cat doesn't speak to us. I'm not saying that, but it's the way cats deal with humans, where they're very uppity about how you treat them, I think. And I think it's put into the dialogue here with the Cat King that I really liked. Every time Crystal or Nico is questioning something in the story, he's like, "Oh, God, you don't know anything at all about this really complicated magic tale that he's telling, this really complicated tale that he's talking about, Lilith, who she is, where she's from, what her powers are, who Esther is, what the powers that she's using are." And he just is rolling his eyes at these stupid humans that know nothing at all about the world that they're walking into. I just thought that was quite funny, because it felt very cat-like to me. But this gives them some idea of how to battle against Esther. He tells them of this black salt that they need to get. That will be a weapon that will be able to help them to defeat Esther. And that prompts them once again to go to the wonderful Tragic Mix.
Yeah.
To go and get the black salt.
Who also gives them immediately the black salt, but also, can at least forewarn them that Esther has been developing a truly horrendous device here.
Did it feel like he was just there prepared for their arrival? He knew someone was going to be coming down to take out Esther. That's why it felt like he had the black powder ready to go.
And luckily gives an old Lucky Charm to Nico.
Yes,
not a piece of cereal, but actually it's kind of a polar bear carving from sort of glassy material.
Yes.
Rock.
Well, yes, exactly. Some kind of rock that he's got. Yeah. But, the reason he gives it to her is because she's the one that listened to his story and tried to help. So he knows that she has a good heart, which I think is evident from Nico. We know that she's that type of character that will always reach out and try and help somebody around her. So that was quite nice. And again, that we hope comes into play later on in the episode anyway. But with the two of them prepared and ready to face Esther, I think that takes us on to our next big point of the episode, the snake, the witch, and the crow. Throughout the episode, we've had moments with Esther, right back at the start where she's practicing her new mechanism on a ghost, a random ghost that she found in Port Townsend, testing to see that if she is able to extract his essence, will that accomplish the same goal that she's been getting from feeding little girls to the snake. And it seems to accomplish it for a few seconds, but that's because that ghost hasn't gone through the kind of pain and trauma that Edwin has.
The ghost doesn't last very long at all, whereas, in her mind, Edwin can keep her juiced in this new power that she's extracting from the pain that she's inflicting.
Yeah.
I
I liked that the fact that we have Crow Monty in the background and all we hear are the crow noises and she's talking to him exactly like it is Monty there criticizing her or asking her, questioning her. So
it's like when she goes, "We've been very nosy today asking me what am I going to do." It's like he's trying to get some intel here himself.
Exactly. And she's dropping all the details of what her future plan is. I also really liked her traveling across town, talking to all the locals because she is in the prime of happiness knowing that she has a big plan to sort out her future, keeping herself young by getting Edwin. So it errs on the side of her being completely unable to talk to other human beings in the town and trying to be polite at times. But it has to come from her almost. So she compliments someone on great haircut you got there, to someone else saying it's a nice day. The young girl says nice day to her, and then she bursts all the kids' balloons, making her cry, and that still gives Esther a bit of joy. So it was an interesting walk across the town that she had, and then kind of a weird conversation with the police officer, tying it back to that first case that brought the kids to Port Talbot in the first place. So I thought that was a bit of an odd conversation. It was kind of almost, well, we have the actress who played the police officer in the first episode, so we'll use them again for this scene.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, now that Crystal and Nico are forearmed and forewarned, Esther is at a house starting up her device to collect Edwin's pain from his toughened soul from his experiences in hell. And his ghost juice, this pain juice is amazing. You see our eyes just do that great golden glow as it starts to work through her body.
Yeah. They do great eye stuff in this show, don't they? They do really good,
they really
good work
do.
on that. And same with Sandman, because we had the black eyes of Sandman, of Morpheus as well, in that show. So I thought that was, they're very good on these shows with doing that. But also Charles is there as well. Charles has been locked up, waiting for her to start her project on Edwin, and then she'll come back. Once Edwin's screaming, then she'll come back and take out her anger on Charles.
She said
well.
she'll play with him later. But I kind of like here as well how Crystal and Nico, are able just to kind of slide in, but they do think that the door handle will have been cursed with some immediate kill spell. And then it's just fine. But I like how they go in here and they're focused totally on rescuing Edwin, but they do get to Charles, and they're kind of like, you get yourself out of here. Here's your bag. You go and get the snake and kill that. We're going to go and rescue Edwin, but push the bag too far away from Charles to actually reach because he's bound with iron, which causes him to burn every time he moves.
And he can't even turn around and tell them to come back and help him out because he's so bound up and he doesn't want to shout.
Exactly.
In case he makes Esther aware of the woman.
And I like that as we're focusing on Crystal and Nico, we do have this moment with Monty in crow form ultimately helping to slide the bag across, which I thought was kind of really funny. Where, Charles is kind of like, when I get out of here, you're dead, after what you did. And then Monty gets on the bag, you see that, and then it pans back to Charles as the bag slides to him, and like, oh, fair dues, Monty. I'm glad Monty got his redemptive arc was that he slid the bag to Charles.
It's quite a strong beak, even for a magical.
Very clever.
Raven, yes.
Very clever. Crows.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoyed that, and Charles is like, now we're talking. As he then.
Oh, it's a redemption arc you're going for. His exact line to Monty as well. So I thought that was quite funny. And then he does take on the job of going after the snake in the basement or underneath the sink, I guess. Where it is. So we have this big battle. Where he tries to use firstly his cricket bat, which is his go-to weapon, but that breaks almost instantaneously on this massive snake.
Yeah.
And then he looks for his sword. So much more mythical battle, I think, with the snake.
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? But I mean,
I think he even calls it a magical sword.
Absolutely. But before he does kill the snake, we do see Nico sort of staying out of eyesight, trying to get the keys in order to unlock the binds that are holding Edwin to the table, whilst Crystal, in a sense, is trying to sort of distract her from Nico here. But I do really enjoy sort of the two moments here where the black salt to the face, which she goes, the screams from Esther is like, oh, my face. It's fine.
It's absolutely fine.
But just then it's kind of like the housekeeper thing of, you're going to clean it up before I kill you. And then the same when, Esther's sacrificial dagger is flung at her by Crystal and it hits the wall and she's like, you're going to patch my wall before I kill you.
Yeah.
So I kind of like these little moments.
I do really like Esther. She's such a great antagonist in the show. She's such a great villainess in the show. She's got just a great one-liner at almost every moment when she's dealing with Crystal. But Crystal does try and use the knowledge that she got from the Cat King to persuade Esther to give up on this goal. Effectively, she's telling her that she knows the story. She knows that her husband was the one that cheated on her, that's starting her down this path of the power that she's tried to attain for all these centuries. And she almost has her until she sees Nico.
Yeah.
And then realizes that, or thinks at least, that Crystal was just trying to distract her while they freed Edwin.
And she tries to take Crystal out there and then after that. She's not going to put up with it anymore.
Yeah.
But Nico does the sacrifice leap in front of her.
Yeah.
This was really shocking, actually.
Absolutely. And
certainly as it transpires and you realize, in this moment, well, she is dead.
Yeah.
And even you get later about her body being shipped back to Japan to her mother.
Yeah.
And, Jenny saying it just feels all so procedural and kind of bureaucratic. So, that was a real shock here. I mean, part of me was thinking, oh, this is where we realize she is a ghost.
Yeah.
Because of the explosion, or that the Lucky Charm was going to immediately sort of kick into action, which it doesn't. The camera focuses on it, but nothing happens in this moment in the episode. And you're kind of like going, oh no.
Yeah.
To be honest. At least I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, that's what I was going to say about the moment where she goes straight for the door handle when Crystal thinks that the door handle has been cursed with a kill you immediately spell. And it's Nico that goes straight for the door handle. And she was in the explosion and found last. I think they're preparing you that at some point in this episode, something really bad's going to happen to Nico. But when it happened, it was really shocking, but it does spur Crystal into action, spur her to go into the mind of Esther.
Yeah. The Esther's not really that impressed about it. She's like, we've done
this already. Yeah, exactly. But she's not there to speak to Esther. She's there to talk to Lilith and say to Lilith what Esther has been doing with the gift that she's been given, this gift of eternal life that was given to her by Lilith. And that was to sacrifice many girls. So who's there to defend those girls that were sacrificed and killed by Esther to keep herself young?
Well, that's it. I love, Crystal saying, I've gone above you, to someone more powerful.
Exactly.
She is forced out of Esther's mind, but at the same time, Charles kills the snake then in that moment. And Esther, you see her aging, which I thought was really good effect.
Yeah.
And then
I was almost going to go into they just bring another actor for that, because that didn't look like aging effects on the actress who played Esther.
It looked really good. Yeah. And then kind of almost like Carrie-like, this blood-covered Lilith comes for Esther and just drags her away. And Edwin is, ultimately taken off the contraption.
Yeah.
But Nico is still dead.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, you see Edwin's anguish and pain when he sees Nico die. I mean, it was really visceral. Absolutely. It was really good, I must say.
Yeah, they've probably got the closest of the bonds of all the characters, Edwin and
well,
Nico,
it's like
and so close.
It's that moment that they had on the roof, where effectively he tells her that he had told the person who he loves that he loves them, and even though he doesn't feel the same, he feels they're better for it, in respect to Charles.
It'll make them better friends. Yeah.
So he feels that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, because there have been those moments throughout the series with Nico and Edwin. They're such close characters. So, yes. But that takes us on to the final point of the episode, which is the quote from Nico when she was talking to Tragic Mick, where she said, even if it's scary and the odds are bad and we might die horrifically, which Nico has, in this case. That's the title that comes up. And as you say, there's that moment with Jenny and everybody back at the butcher shop at Crystal's apartment and at Nico's room, where Jenny's saying it's just also so procedural. So confirmation there that Nico is gone. You're right. I absolutely expected that at some point between the two, either we'd see the ghost of Nico appearing to everybody because the lads are there. They can all see ghosts. So maybe we'd see the ghost of Nico there, or we would see the totem working its magic and resurrecting Nico in some way there.
Well, that's it. Yeah. But interestingly, the sprites have also gone.
Exactly. That's the only indication that something is different here. Yeah. That Crystal's looking at the jar. The sprites are gone from there, but she doesn't question anything about it. I don't know whether she thinks they've run away or whether they've just disappeared because Nico died, but it indicates that something's different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And as I say, we get Crystal staying on now to help Jenny clear up and pack everything away of Nico's to send back to Japan. But Crystal will also then head back to London and stay with the Dead Boy detectives in their office. They're going to come back and join us so that they all go back the long way.
Yeah.
And even Jenny is offered as well, but she decides to stay on, but she may join them.
Yes, it sounded much more like a maybe. And that's probably a good thing, given what she's gone through in the series. One of the things that keeps echoing in my head about Jenny as a character is when Nico was trying to set her up on that date with her secret admirer, Jenny was going, I know every single woman in town, and none of them are for me, none of them that will match up with me. And now she's being invited to London, which is definitely a place someone like Jenny will be able to find somebody with a much bigger pool than a place like Port Townsend is. So I think Jenny will probably follow over pretty quickly, given that she has great butchering skills, and that would be something that you could see in the artisan butchery in London.
She could be like Sweeney Todd.
Well, maybe, but I still don't think Jenny would go that evil.
No, I don't think so.
Unless possessed by David again in the future.
Yeah, I mean, Edwin also says goodbye to the Cat King, who gives his condolences about Nico as well. And I like how Edwin's there saying, I kind of know you better now. You're lonely, you play games, you change yourself to distract yourself. You're like me, effectively. You know?
Yeah. But he also says the entirety of what's happened here is your fault. If you hadn't locked us to Port Townsend, then we'd all be gone within a couple of days, or within a couple of hours, probably.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of all the Cat King's fault. Must say, was very unimpressed with the Cat King's look in this last episode, as he's changed into a black cat now.
Yeah.
Didn't like the hair. I think that was probably the big distraction for me. It looked much more like a wig than the last hair did.
It just looked plastered down.
Yeah.
Too much wax.
As a person like myself who uses a lot of wax in my hair, I shouldn't complain about that. but that particular version of it.
You mean your concrete hairdo?
My concrete hairdo, yes. At least I have all that hair that I have.
So do I.
You do. But they do all head back to London. And there is one final major character that we hadn't seen, who returns from her visit to the principal back in the Afterlife Bureau. We get the night nurse visiting them in London. A great way of using a background character from the season, the postman who comes from the Dead Letter office, he confirms this time. Yeah. And the night nurse has posted herself to the Dead Boy Detectives, learning that the post will always reach them no matter where they are in the world. Yeah. So she's posted herself to the two of them.
Yeah, and her superior joins her once she's got the location. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that she's not given any name here, and she just says, I'm a cog that makes a very big wheel turn. Mm-hmm. I'm just a cog.
Absolutely. You know? I refer to her as the principal there just because I think on Wikipedia it had her called as the principal.
I may have just missed it. You know?
I don't think it was in the episode. No, I don't think it was in the episode. It's not in my notes. So, but interestingly, this also doesn't go the way that the night nurse thought it was going to go. Because I'm going to call her the principal because of Wikipedia. Yeah. She sees what the boys have been doing, solving crimes for ghosts that couldn't pass on, and then connects the dots between what she does with the night nurse and what the night nurse has been able to do, allowing kids to pass on to the next stage in their life. And that's the same thing the Dead Boy Detectives are doing. They're allowing ghosts to pass on to the next phase after their death.
Well, that's it. She recruits them really here saying, you're doing the same thing to help souls move on to some extent. And you're making a difference because I think the night nurse has just been given a big award by her because of all these people that she's managed to sort.
Yes, she's just the department's just had a commendation.
But she's I can't really stop them from what they do best, but that they do need some kind of operator chaperone.
Yes,
and the night nurse is effectively told to be their operator by the superior.
Yes,
and so now they've got to find room not only for Crystal when she returns from helping Jenny, but also the night nurse and, of course, the two of them.
And potentially Jenny if she comes over too.
Exactly.
So, this little one-room office is going to have to be expanded a bit more. Yeah. So I guess they're going to need more payments from the ghosts that they help, rather than just magic trinkets that they've been getting in the past. They may need some actual cold hard cash to expand their operation a bit. Although maybe Crystal can stump up for that since her parents are very wealthy.
Yeah, just get the credit card.
Yeah,
exactly.
That could be it.
But then our final moment here is Nico effectively, you don't see her face, of course, but we do see the little polar bear Lucky Charm.
We do.
An igloo.
In an igloo.
Looking like Santa, slightly.
Yeah, I had it written down as meanwhile below the Northern Lights. And
yes,
as you know, John, we've all had the Northern Lights over in this hemisphere. So what may have been filmed to mean definitely Iceland now could mean anywhere in the world just because of when we watched the episode. Anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. But
yeah, I would say so. I would say, given the igloo, it's probably more towards the North Pole.
It was intended to be.
Yeah, and with large sprites as well. Yes. Or small Nico.
Yes.
I mean, that scale... Oh, it does show the igloo next to trees as well, with it snowing outside. So
might be inside a snow globe instead of a jar.
Well, it could be that. So, but I am thinking it's large sprites.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But yes, seemed to be confirmation that Nico's alive.
Or somewhere. Maybe.
Or somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends what that spell was. I know it obviously was kind of like a Cruciatus curse, but of some description. But you just wonder if there was anything else or how the Lucky Charm altered it.
I think it's more the Lucky Charm. I feel like that was just a kind of a light knife that she'd created, that Esther had created, that went through Nico, killing her. Because again, blood spilling out when she was on the floor, so it feels like she was cut into by that attack. But good to think at least that Nico has survived somehow, and that, I guess, will be your story for season 2. If we get a season 2, we'll be searching for Nico and getting her back.
Yeah. Searching for Nico, searching for yourself with Crystal.
And of course, the new agency of the Dead Boy Detectives with now 5 members of the team.
Yeah, exactly.
and only 2 of them being dead boys, like Edwin and Charles.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They may have to change that name. Maybe that's why everybody's been calling it a really silly name throughout the season. Maybe that's it. Anything else about the episode you want to talk about, John?
No, nothing from me. I think just, overall, I really, really enjoyed this last episode. I've loved the season. I think the central actors who play the characters of Charles, Edwin, Crystal, and Nico have just been fantastic.
Absolutely.
And really good sense of togetherness from them, in that sense. I love all the side characters from this, from Esther and Monty through to the Cat King, the cats, and the sprites.
Absolutely.
And just that quirkiness of having, spread through these episodes, the sprites and the cats sort of being potty-mouthed.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the cases in the main, and I think, this was a really intriguing ending, having Nico there just holding the Lucky Charm. And I really hope it gets a season 2. I mean, for me, this episode, I'd give 4 cute side braids out of 5.
Very good.
I really want to see the likes of the Cat King back, Jenny back, the sprites, even Monty, and possibly, I don't think Esther necessarily is going to come back.
So.
I think that is final, but, what a character that equal to Esther, as their big foe there, as well as progressing that storyline of Charles and Edwin and, their work on Earth as ghosts to help the afterlife, but also the relationship with the other Endless.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing that's great about the Sandman universe is it does include the afterlife. It does include places that you can visit where people like Esther could be being tortured or tormented in an afterlife. So you don't have to have her come back in season 2 of the Dead Boy Detectives, but you could have her in the background of a scene at hell in season 2 of the Sandman.
Yeah, that's true.
Any character is up for grabs now. As they expand this universe, we could have just the Cat King on his own in an episode dealing with the Dream of Cats, which is Morpheus, of course, as well. So you could have those moments where these characters are interplaying with each other. And what if Death catches up with Edwin and Charles over in the Sandman show? Those kind of opportunities are definitely available over there, which is always a cool thing if Netflix do right by this universe that they have available to them. Loads of books have been written within the series. Loads of books originally by Neil Gaiman, and other comics written by other comic writers in the DC universe that connect these characters and these stories. So there's loads of possibilities out there, definitely. For me, this final episode, it's an interesting one. I feel the big drawback for it is the 8-episode season that's here. And it's weird. It's unbalanced for me. Sometimes when you watch 8-episode shows, you go, oh, I wish there was a bit more in episode 2 about this storyline, or a bit more in episode 3. This time it felt like they got commissioned as part of the original Greg Berlanti DC shows, as we know. And most of those have been 12 to 15 episodes. Even Doom Patrol was about 12 episodes, which is originally a spin-off from. And it felt like they did the 7 episodes. The structure of them is a case and a bit of progression for the characters each episode, which they kept to for the first 7 episodes. And then suddenly they get to this 8th episode and they go, wow, we've got loads to cover. And every scene feels like it could have been expanded upon in this final episode. It felt like there's more to do. And there's just moments there where, even that moment with Nico right at the end, where you don't see her face, or the final scene where Edwin and Charles are in the room on their own and they're only dealing with the night nurse and a new character that we haven't seen before. They don't have Crystal with them. There's loads of those scenes which feel like...
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it feels like they were written and put together to make a final episode out of a series that was supposed to last for longer, or at least set up a season 2 in a different way. But I was thinking of stuff like Supernatural, where a character like Esther, where you need to beat her with using multiple different types of magics, you'd probably pick up an element of those through each of the episodes, through each of the 4 extra episodes, while doing another case or 2 as you went along, and then build up to a final standoff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even I think possibly Crystal using her powers, it was just, in a sense, it was just to get inside her mind to call upon Lilith.
Yes.
I think the Lilith element could have been further explored here.
Absolutely, and that's what I was talking about earlier on in the episode, when Nico says, do you remember we saw that picture of Lilith? And I was told by the shop owner, if you want to talk to Lilith, you can go to any painting of Lilith, any representation of her, and talk to her through that.
Yeah.
I was going, well, that's something you put in episode 9, they go and talk to Lilith, and then in episode 10, Lilith comes back and takes Esther. Whereas here, it was Crystal touching Esther, going into her mind, talking to Lilith there and then Lilith comes in 30 seconds later.
Sure, yeah.
So it felt like there were bits left over from a previous treatment that was a longer series. I think they did a great job with this final episode.
Yeah.
Making the story that they did and dealing with the characters as much as they did, but I felt like this is a condensed episode of multiple episodes in this one, rather than the rest of the series being naturally structured to be 8 episodes. That's probably what I mean. But they did do what you would want to accomplish with the first season of a show. They left me wanting more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, again, even if we don't get a second season of Dead Boy Detectives, I hope we see those characters again at some point in the Sandman universe.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. As those of you who listen to our episode 7 and 6 podcast might know, we're recording this one a little bit earlier. So I'm going to add in, hopefully, a bit more feedback in here, which we'll get between now and when I release the episode, John. But we do have a bit of feedback over in our Facebook group. First up, Heather Wallace says, Charles, surely you'd call the night nurse Bosley in her new role with the agency. I've really enjoyed this series and I hope that's not the last we see of it. If there is a second season, they've surely hinted that Nico is also back, right? I hope so. She is my favourite on the show. I love how her kindness listening to Tragic Mick was why he helped her. At its heart, the show is about the kindness we give others without expecting anything back, including Akashi and the whale, whose kindness then influenced the night nurse to show some humanity for the boys, although she regretted it. A TV trope I hate is characters storming in somewhere, demanding answers, and rushing off the second they get the barest information when there is obviously so much more to know. I like that this show flipped that, Nico taking the time to listen to Mick, and the Cat King insisting Crystal and Nico sit and listen to Esther's backstory. The stories told in both cases also gave us beautiful animation and a much more fleshed out world of magic. Does anyone else wonder what happened to Emma, the young ghost girl who asked the boys to help Crystal in the first place? Did Crystal actually know her at all, since she never mentioned her again?
Thanks so much, Heather. Really agree around the show at its heart. I think it's so good, like you say, the kindness of others without expecting anything in return. And I think that's like such a great center for this show.
Yeah.
And yes, now that you mention it around Emma, I wonder what did happen to her.
Yeah.
Think she may have just been sorted ultimately.
Yeah.
But we don't get any mention of that from the principal.
That's true.
You know, it's the Devlins we hear about, but not Emma. So Emma might still be waiting in London.
She might be. Yeah. Yeah. Because it does feel weird when you think about Crystal's story now and hearing what she was like beforehand, and then she met David, the demon, and then she went out with David. And Emma says she met her in between, sometime before she got possessed by David, we think, or at least before she started acting really weirdly, like eating out of a dumpster. So when was it that Emma was actually friends with Crystal? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is very interesting. Another little bit that's left hanging from the show overall. But great thoughts, though, Heather. I'm glad you really enjoyed the show. And yeah, that central concept of the kindness we give to others and passing it on, really does pay off in the show. I like that too.
And the animations as well, really, really fantastic.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Heather. Dr. Bob Phillips says, cracking payoffs throughout this final. So many options for happiness. Our increasingly misnamed Dead Boy Detective Agency. Only 2 out of 5 now falling into this bracket.
That's right.
The emotional resolution of the walrus, the payback for girl killing enacted by the god of wronged women, and the spiral staircase climb out of our museum from the hell she had made of her life and forgotten into this one, resolved to make the future bright. Questions remain. Is Nico in a cute snow house? Will there be an eligible bachelorette for our butcher girl? Will the cuddly cat king get late night mirror assisted booty calls from Edwin when he finally unlaces himself? All these and more demand season 2. Could not agree with you more there, Bob, about a season 2.
Yeah.
In terms of the late night mirror assisted booty calls, interestingly, we have just had a portal put on Talbot Street in Dublin, which connects with New York Central Square.
It does. Well, a video camera.
Yeah,
it's not
a
real
video
portal.
camera. So it's called the Portal, which has been turned off because, yes, things like booty calls were being done through the Portal to
course they were.
unsuspecting New Yorkers from people with their own little fan site.
I will say, in fairness, the New Yorkers were doing exactly the same
they
back,
were.
but the 5-hour time difference means it was about 3 o'clock in the morning here, so not as many people were seeing them as the New Yorkers were seeing at 3 o'clock in their daytime.
So
I would say.
it could be the same type of thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
with
maybe.
the mirror-assisted booty call.
Yeah.
And I really hope an eligible bachelorette is found for our butcher girl Jenny in London.
Yes, I will just say I don't think Edwin's the booty call type, though. I think he's probably put paid to the relationship with the
think
cat
so.
king there and said, we're not compatible, we're too similar, I think is what he's actually saying to him.
Definitely.
But anyway, love it. Thanks so much, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
All right, John, I'm going to take the rest of the feedback, if that's all right.
That's fine by me.
All right, off we go on our week away. I don't know why I said that. I'm back already from my part of the holiday. John's still away, as I said, so I'm going to continue on with the feedback that we got on Dead Boy Detectives finale. Mindy Megan says, you dreamers touched on this in your recap of episode 1, but I had no idea what direction this series would take due to all its CW roots. However, I'm so pleased that it's been a great mix of funny, violent, heartwarming, dark, and of course foul-mouthed. As a big Sandman fan, I'm glad the Dead Boys aren't for kids, and my heart absolutely broke in the best way when we heard Death repeat, "Now's when you find out." Another random note from earlier in the season, I don't think anyone mentioned it before, but the mystery of severed feet inside shoes washed up from the Salish Sea near Port Townsend is a real thing. Good job, writers, for pulling in a real-life local area mystery. It was something like 22 feet in shoes that washed up between 2004 and 2016, and maybe an evil seagull is the missing piece. All that is to say, I enjoyed this show so much more than I anticipated, and by far my favourite dynamic is Edwin and Nico. I'm obsessed with those two. I'm gutted by Nico's death, and I'm begging everyone to watch this season over and over so we get a season 2 and get to see where Nico and the sprites ended up. Thanks, Mindy. Yeah, I love the dynamic between Edwin and Nico. It was really getting good as the episodes closed out. I love how good friends the two of them are, how much Nico's able to bring Edwin out of his shell, and how much they actually talk about the relationships around them between the two of them. Yeah, there's such a great dynamic between the two of them. Hopefully we get to see more of them in season 2 if that does come. That's fascinating that the story of the severed feet inside shoes is a true tale. I didn't even think to look that up. Interesting. Wow, I wouldn't like to be down the beach when that arrives. And an interesting little fact that I learnt in my week away, because I've been reading some news stories out there. Neil Gaiman actually wrote the scene with Death and the scene with Desire and the scene in the office at the end with the night nurse and the Dead Boy Detectives and the principal, I think I was calling her. So that's really interesting. So he has a really big hand in those characters coming over from Sandman and closing out season 1 of the Dead Boy Detectives. I wonder, will that lead to an appearance in Sandman of these characters as the newly formed group of Dead Boy Detectives? That would be very interesting, wouldn't it? Thanks, Mindy. On to Rory Robinson, who says, love, 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 and like you've both been saying, very annoying it was dropped all at once and then just disappeared. I thought an excellent through-line story-wise with enjoyable cases of the week throughout. Also worked as a coming-of-age, or coming-of-death story, and a well-handled queer love story to boot. All in all, a lot to love, especially without too much or any Sandman knowledge required. Series 2, please. I'm aware it's incredibly unlikely, but the showrunners themselves are pushing on their social media, so let's see. If nothing else, getting them integrated into Sandman would be fantastic. Great work on your podcast as always. It made me not binge watch the whole thing at once, which is how it should have been dropped. Excellent stuff, Rory. I hope we didn't delay your watching of the episodes, but great to see that you are watching along with us and joining us on the podcast each week. Thanks for that, and thanks for your kind words as well. Let's hope we're going to see a season 2 of this show. Paul Tenchi Lee says, meant to write for your episodes 6 and 7 coverage, but was delayed by trying to get my comics reading finished. Now that I'm actually done reading, Episode 8 was a real roller coaster. After Nico's save with the night nurse at the end of episode 7, I foolishly forgot about Esther, and also because I waited like a week before watching episode 8. I very much enjoyed seeing Crystal and Nico team up, and there was just a hint of the comics Crystal and Hannah hacking St. Hilarion's computers. Their work in Esther's house was terrific, and I was surprised, not surprised, of what happened to Nico there and at the end. Crystal finding out her full name and who her parents are syncs up to her comics origins, but making her a mean girl and the whole David the Demon backstory flirts with a darker storyline without having to actually play it out as a main plot point. One possible direction of a second season gets ordered is to adapt parts of the lit Buckingham run and have Crystal go back to school, to St. Helens, and let Edwin and Charles face their bullies. The only problem with this idea is that we saw Simon in hell, and I think he was one of the bullies involved with the sacrifice. This could be worked around by having more than 3 boys involved, and that Simon himself died at the hands of the other bullies and also ended up in hell. This might actually work because Simon says something about 40,000 days when Edwin asks how long he's been tearing pages from the book. 40,000 days is not quite 110 years, which would be no sooner than 2026 if Simon also died in 1916, but 40,000 is also an easy round number to speak out loud. I'm fascinated to find out what will happen to Nico and how the sprites are involved. There's a suggestion that Jenny might also end up in London in a future season, though that would mean not having Tragic Mick in the second season. It's really interesting seeing Edwin and Charles get slowly aged up as different writers took over their stories in the comics, given their apparent age for the show, and because we can't freeze actors' ages in live action, we aren't likely to get the storyline where Crystal and Charles grow apart as Crystal gets older, like in one of the comic book runs. That's really interesting. Thanks very much for that feedback, Paul. Yes, some interesting thoughts there from the comic books particularly. I didn't get to read all the comic books before this started out. I know I've read bits of the Dead Boy Detectives comics that followed their appearance in The Sandman, just to get a feel of them. But that's really interesting that there's some ties in there to the comic books as well. Also a great catch on the length of time that Simon is in hell. Yes, he was one of the bullies involved, of course, as those conversations went back and forth between Simon. You learned that he was one of the bullies that was involved in the death of Edwin. So I wonder if they would think about revisiting that in the future, having Edwin and Charles face their bullies in the future. That would be kind of interesting to go back and see a bit more of their backstory and see the people that bullied them. That could be an interesting way to do it. But yeah, again, some interesting options for season 2. Everything's on the table again now. Thanks very much for that, Paul. Barbie Palace says, love it. I so want a season 2 to see the Night Nurse grow and have empathy. I want to see all these characters grow and reach a happy conclusion. Thanks, Barbie. And finally, we got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, greetings, fellow witch-ending defenders. A fantastic capper of a season. While I still need the post-credit scene explained, it seems that Nico's not dead, but that the Wicked Witch of Port Townsend is. Another viewing not only of this episode, but of the whole season is required to give it the more detailed discussion it deserves, leaving me for now to just say, wow, really, really good. Although I cannot speak for Titans, as I never watched it, there was a marked difference in quality between Doom Patrol and the rest of the Arrowverse that could only be explained by Berlanti seemingly being a Doom Patrol showrunner in name only. Now there's another show to add to the Risen Cream list. Please tell me there's a season 2 on the horizon and tell Chris he missed out on a good one. For this episode, I give it 5 tabled charging stations, cruel crystal considerations, and Severus snakes out of 5. For the season overall, I give it 4.5, counting crows out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, I've been telling Chris to check this one out. I know he's had a little less time on his hands to catch up on all the TV that we cover here on the podcast. So I think he has started Dead Boy Detectives. I don't think he got to the end of it just yet, but I'm hoping he's enjoying it. And I'll hopefully catch up with him this weekend to have a chat with him, see what he thought overall. Great stuff. Glad you really enjoyed it, Coffee and Vodka. I know Doom Patrol is one of your favourite shows as well. So I'm glad it stuck the landing, I guess, with Dead Boy Detectives 2. And that's it. That's the end of our feedback for this episode. Thanks so much to all of you who sent in additional feedback when I put the call out, keeping me company while John's away for the next couple of days. So I'll send you back over to John and myself to say goodbye. But we will say thank you so much to all of our wonderful fellow dreamers who've joined us for this extra delve into the Sandman universe with Dead Boy Detectives. Been a lot of fun this series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do wish there was more. I wish it was spread out more. said before, wish it was released weekly as well, so people would be enjoying it along with us each week. That would be great. Hopefully we will see more of the Dead Boy Detectives in the future.
I really hope so.
Yeah, what we will see more of, though, of course, is Neil Gaiman, because we will be covering, again, for Season 3 of Good Omens and Season 2 of The Sandman. Now, there has been talk about Season 2 of The Sandman, that it's not going to be released as a season in the way that Dead Boy Detectives was, all dumped in a day, or the way that Season 1 of Sandman was, that they'll actually put out episodes in arcs. They'll have 3 episodes covering the seasons of Mist's arc, for example, and then an episode here and there, the way they did the final episode of Sandman, which came about 3 or 4 weeks after the first season. So we'll know more about that later on as it gets closer to the release of Sandman, but I think they're almost finished the principal photography on that, at least, which means we're very close to the announcements around second season.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
There is also Anansi Boys as well on Prime Video that's in production.
Yeah.
But it's gone a little quiet there on the adaptation of that Neil Gaiman novel. But knowing Prime Video, they'll probably tell us a few days before because they kind of just have Prime Video.
Yeah.
They don't seem to promote as much.
Yeah, it's like a lot of times with their new shows, they kind of tell you, you know, here tomorrow with overnight delivery from Amazon is this show on Prime Video, and then suddenly it takes off. So we're hopeful for Anansi Boys. It's a really good novel, kind of a spin-off and sequel to Neil Gaiman's American Gods, kind of connected to that, but you can read it completely separately. Well worth reading if you're going away on holiday this year and you want a Neil Gaiman book to read. Read Anansi Boys or American Gods. That's my recommendations. Great stuff. That's it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time. Do stay subscribed to the podcast on TV Podcast Industries, though.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, fellow dreamers, for joining us across this 8-episode season of Dead Boy Detectives. Until our next encounter in the sandbox, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, keep dreaming.
Bye.
Bye.